Welcome, everyone. We're going to wait a few moments to have everyone come in, and then we shall get started. Good morning. All right, we're going to let just people trickle in for the next few minutes, and then I will get started. We got a full agenda here today for the next hour or so, so we appreciate y'all for joining us for this webinar today. But I'll get started at probably 10:03. Good morning, everyone. All right, so for the sake of time, I'm going to get started. Appreciate you all being here today. My name is Lily Hecker. I am the program manager for the Colorado Industrial Tax Credit Offering. This is the Cycle 4 CITCO Program Standards and Guidelines informational webinar. Yep, William, I'll get to that in just a minute. Thanks for putting that in the chat, though. Appreciate that comment. The Colorado Industrial Tax Credit Offering Program, or CITCO, is administered under the Colorado Energy Office's Strategic Initiatives and Finance team. Again, today is October 7th. This is the informational webinar for the Cycle 4 of the CITCO program. Let's see. All right. So today, a little bit of an agenda. We kind of have a jam-packed hour, and we'll get into the logistics of things in just a second. But again, my name is Lily Hecker. I'm the program manager for the Colorado Industrial Tax Credit Offering. We'll go over some introductions and housekeeping. Then we'll get into an industrial decarbonization overview. Thirdly, we'll dive into the program specifics for the CITCO program. Then we're joined by Anna Moon from the Colorado Clean Energy Fund. She'll be talking about some other financing options offered by her organization. Then we'll get into a Q&A, and then we'll have closing remarks. So a little bit of housekeeping. As you can see, there is a Q&A box and also a chat box. We ask that if you have comments or questions, put them in the chat box or Q&A box. All questions will be answered live by me and the other program admin folks here at the Energy Office at the end of this webinar. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat, but we will be refraining from answering them until the end of the webinar. If you have questions after the webinar, please fill out the Google form or send your questions to CEO_CITCO@state.co.us. The CEO will respond accordingly. Friendly reminder that this webinar is being recorded and will be made publicly available on CEO's website within the next week or so. A summary of all of the Q&A and submitted questions throughout this webinar and the entire application cycle will be posted online. Any project specifics will be taken out of those questions, but we will be posting all the questions that have been asked during this on our Google Drive. Libby, if you wouldn't mind putting the Citco website and then I can put the standards and guidelines folder in the chat for folks' references. And then we'll dive right back in. So yeah, thanks, Libby. So there's the Citco website, and then also I'm sharing the Cycle 4 Google Drive link to you all for reference throughout this webinar. Feel free to follow along if you'd like. Alrighty. Cool. Next, some meeting norms that we like to uphold here at the state when giving webinars. Please engage in a respectful and professional communication. William, you should be able to see it. The links were posted to the, oh, let's see. Libby, would you mind trying to figure that out? It says it was linked to the hosts and panelists, so it should, oh, here we go. Got it. Sorry about that. Thank you, William, for that flag. Now you should be able to see it. All right. Cool. So please be respectful, engage in a professional and respectful manner. We also value diverse perspectives and foster inclusivity here at the state. Like I mentioned, please leave all of your questions to the end. Feel free to put them in the Q&A or the chat box as I'm giving this presentation, but we will be answering them at the end of my presentation. Again, this webinar is for Cycle 4 of the Colorado Industrial Tax Credit Offering Program here at the state. You can find the general standards and guidelines document on the Google Drive folder that I sent to all. If anything changes during the application cycle, we will post notifications on the Colorado Industrial Tax Credit Offering website and reflect those changes in the standards and guidelines. We do not foresee any changes happening during this application cycle, but it is good to note that if changes were to occur, they would be made publicly available on the website and in the general standards and guidelines documents. Again, clarifying questions or program-specific questions, please put them in the Q&A box. And for any comments, opinions, or other feedback, please contact the CEO or the Colorado Energy Office at ceo_citco@state.co.us. So this program's key personnel are divided into two buckets. We have program and administrators or managers here at the state. Our senior program manager that oversees this program and other industrial decarbonization efforts made at the CEO is managed by Will Manis. I am the program manager. My name is Lily Hecker for the Citco program. And then we are also joined today by Elizabeth Lee, or Libby Lee, who is a program manager for the Clean Air program, which is Citco's sister grant program. And she also runs the Cannabis Resource Optimization program. Secondly, we also have hired on a consulting firm to help provide technical assistance to this program. That firm is Clear Result. They have 4 administrative personnel that help us out: Ben Maddock, Eliana Olais, Jack Phillips, and Nate Dungy. I believe Nate has joined us today. If you have any questions about the personnel or how this program is administrated by these people, feel free to reach out. The Colorado Energy Office has a North Star when it comes to the programs that we administer here at the state. We've defined a mission and vision, and then our impacts from this mission and vision are threefold. So our mission is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and customer energy costs by advancing clean energy, energy efficiency, and zero emission vehicles to benefit all Coloradans. Our vision is a prosperous and clean energy future for Colorado. And how we realize this mission and vision is through threefold under our impacts, which are economic benefits, so like creating jobs and supporting businesses, environmental benefits, reducing those emissions, improving air quality, etc., and community benefits, so enhancing energy affordability, equity, reliability, and access for all Coloradans. Under the industrial programs here at the Energy Office, we also have a mission and vision. Our slogan is Invest Today to Save Tomorrow. Our mission is to provide innovative technical and financial resources and policy solutions to drive Colorado's sustainable net zero transformation within the industrial sector. And our vision is to increase prosperity and resiliency within Colorado's industrial sector. I'm going to dive into a brief industrial decarbonization overview, and then we'll get into the CITCO program. So based on the Colorado Greenhouse Gas 2023 inventory and the 2021 EIA electric energy use data, Colorado's industrial sector, so that includes manufacturing, agriculture, mining, and construction, accounts for around 44% of the state's primary energy use and around 47% of the state's CO2 equivalent emissions. The other three buckets that the emissions fall into are transportation, commercial, and residential. So when defining industrial decarbonization, we have three scopes and sources of emissions, and I will provide an overview of those in the coming slides. But we'd like to recognize that due to our mission and vision here at the state, and as a result of this program, industrial decarbonization is classified as the process of reducing or eliminating or avoiding greenhouse gas emissions from industrial facilities at manufacturing sites across the state. The industrial sector is also classified as a difficult to decarbonize sector of the energy economy, and I'll get into that I'll get into why in a second. And then also diverse energy inputs that feed into this heterogeneous industrial processes and operations is important to note because the industrial sector has a wide variety of unique requirements and energy profiles. So it's important to segment decarbonization at the industrial sector into different pillars and address those specific to those needs. So the sources of industrial greenhouse gas emissions can be classified into four buckets, and they range through all the different types of scopes, so scope 1 through scope 3 emissions. The first being fuel-related emissions, so emissions from combustion and the use of fuels at industrial operations. This would be considered, if these emissions are coming from on-site combustion, this would be considered a scope 1 emission. The second bucket is electricity generation from emissions. So these are emissions from the generation of electricity used at industrial facilities. If this electricity generation is happening off-site, that would be considered a scope 2 emission. Additionally, industrial process emissions, so emissions from chemical transformations at industrial sites from industrial activities. This would be considered a scope 1 emission. And lastly, manufactured product life cycle emissions, so upstream and or downstream emissions associated with the product coming out of that industrial facility. The upstream or downstream aspects or emissions as a result of those processes that are not happening at the industrial facility, those would be considered Scope 3 emissions. So to address these different 4 buckets of emissions, industrial decarbonization can also be segmented into 4 pillars. And all of these pillars are interrelated. We know that industrial decarbonization is extremely hard, not only because of the high energy usage needs, but also the processes themselves can emit greenhouse gas emissions. So the 4 pillars are energy efficiency, industrial electrification, low carbon fuels and feedstocks and energy sources, and or carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Energy efficiency involves optimizing industrial processes and equipment to reduce energy consumption. Industrial electrification refers to the transformation from fossil fuel-based energy sources to electricity for industrial processes. This shift is crucial because you want to be able to source from low carbon or renewable energy sources to be able to realize those emission reduction efforts. Low carbon fuels, feedstocks, and energy sources involves several strategies, but the main being replacing those fuels, those on-site fuels with electrification or sourcing different energy sources for those processes. And lastly, we understand that sometimes to reduce emissions associated with an industrial process, carbon capture, utilization, and storage is necessary because the process itself cannot be transformed. We want to be clear that decarbonization in the industrial sector does not mean deindustrialization. We want to make sure that we are providing resources and decarbonizing to make sure that we are able to upkeep our economy here at the state and not get rid of different manufacturing sites. So as a result of the mission and vision of the Energy Office and trying to tackle these large sources of emissions at the industrial facilities across the state, back in 2023, the Colorado Industrial Tax Credit offering came into play. So this webinar is hopefully going to give you a little bit more insight on what Cycle 4 has to offer for this program, what are the different changes, and how to apply. So in 2023, House Bill 1272 was passed. It was signed into law and authorized $168 million to be operated under the Colorado Industrial Tax Credit offering. This bill also created a framework for the CITCO eligibility and processes for administering the program. What was included in the bill is that the $168 million was allocated under CITCO, and this is a total tax credit reservation authority. The CITCO program also is divided into 2 buckets of refundable tax credits, the first being industrial studies, the second being greenhouse gas emission reduction projects. And lastly, the program is administered on a semi-annual basis, with application periods opening on April 1st and October 1st biannually until the end of 2032 or until all funding has been allocated. It is also important to note that this past year, there was another legislative bill that was passed, House Bill 25182, which is the embodied carbon bill. This authorized embodied carbon improvements as an eligible application type under CITCO. We'll get into kind of what more that means, but if you're looking on clarifications on how this bill has been realized under CITCO, I highly recommend going into the Google Drive and selecting the embodied carbon standards and guidelines to read more about that. So under Sitco, who are the eligible applicants? As you can see, if you have been reviewing the standards and guidelines from previous rounds, we have one major change that has come to the eligible applicant types. In the past, we have been limited, or we have limited eligible applicants to fall under NAICS codes 31 through 33. We have eliminated this criteria. So if you go into the general standards and guidelines, you can see that there is now a definition under what we're calling an industrial facility. If you are an industrial facility that does not fall under NAICS codes 31 through 33, yet fit into the definition of an industrial facility under Sitco, you are now an eligible applicant type. This does not mean that 31 through 33 NAICS codes are excluded. This just means that we are opening up applications to other NAICS codes. So you can still fall under 31 through 33. That does not eliminate you from this program. Additionally, GEM 1 and GEM 2 facilities, so those are the regulated industrial facilities here at the state, are eligible for this program. As a service providers, so energy as a service providers, carbon management project developers, and specialty purpose vehicles. An example of an SPV is like something like a joint venture when an organization puts all of its assets for a certain project under some sort of LLC or joint venture with another organization that takes on the liability of those assets. That specific entity can claim the credit as well. Projects, like I said, can be cited in industrial facilities that meet the North American Industry Classification System codes 31 through 33. A few examples of these are food and beverage manufacturing, textile mills, and primary and metal products, wood product manufacturing, chemical manufacturing, etc. For a good caveat to remember, if you are a carbon management developer, that these projects can but do not need to be cited at industrial facilities, nor do they need to be, the emission reductions need to be claimed at industrial facilities. So carbon management projects can be standalone for this program. So this current application period for Sitco opened on October 1st, and it is closing on December 31st of 2025. This is cycle 4. Like I said before, the program is segmented into 2 buckets. Tax credit reservations can be applied to the following. The first being industrial studies, and the second being the greenhouse gas emission reduction projects. For both of these buckets, only 30% of approved costs can be claimed towards the credit, so it's a tax credit reservation of 30% of these approved costs. For industrial studies, this 30% cannot exceed $1 million per application. And for the projects, this 30% has to fall between $75,000 and $8 million per application. The CEO can increase cost coverage to 50% and select case-by-case basis based on project innovation. It is important to note the CEO can reserve credits for current or future tax years based on anticipated project completion. But it is also extremely important to know that credits cannot be reserved for studies or projects that have been completed before the application is approved and the state contract has been signed. If you are awarded through Sitco, you will enter what we're calling a tax credit agreement with the state, and there will be an associated statement of work. We'll get into that a little bit later in the webinar. But no eligible costs, so those capital costs associated with your application can be completed or incurred before that contract has been signed. So what are the different industrial studies that are applicable under Sitco? We have 4 main buckets, and then we kind of have like a catch-all as well. So the 4 Industrial studies are energy and emission audits, feasibility studies, front-end engineering design studies, and front-end engineering design studies. As you can see under the feasibility study sub-criteria, there's also an other option. If you are looking to apply for cost coverage for an industrial study that does not fall under these initial 4 buckets, please reach out to the CEO. It is likely that we would allow for you to apply for this study. We would just like to be prefaced on what that entails. And you can reach out via the Google form and or to our email or during our office hours. For the eligible greenhouse gas emission reduction projects, there are 18 different sub-application or sub-projects under this program. The 2 main differences from this list that have changed between previous application cycles and this current application cycle are the definitions and eligible applications under carbon management and removal systems. We have expanded eligible project types under that sub-application, and then also the addition of embodied carbon. If you have a project at an industrial facility that does not fall under one of these 17 application types, we have a catch-all as well. We're calling this other measures and improvements sub-application. There is a legislative criteria associated with this sub-application, which includes the fact that the Scope 1 emissions for the emission reduction project has to reduce the Scope 1 emissions by at least 20%. You can find this legislative definition in our general standards and guidelines. Again, all of these projects can either be applied to retrofit projects, expansion projects, and or new build projects. All of these applications will require a business as usual scenario with a greenhouse gas emission reduction project specific comparison. So that is a good caveat to have. Again, we highly recommend reviewing the general standards and guidelines for the different criteria associated with each application type. We understand that industrial decarbonization is a hard thing to do, and having a singular project type isn't necessarily completely feasible for all industrial facilities here across the state. So we do encourage project bundling. We've segmented this into 2 different scenarios. The one being that a single organization is applying for greenhouse gas emission reduction projects under a single location. If this is the case, if you'd like to apply for multiple different greenhouse gas emission reduction projects at one single location, you would be bundling those specific projects under one general application under Sitco. Again, it is important to know that if this is your case, all of these projects that you apply for under one application have to be completed within the same tax year. And the total summation of the eligible projects costs, the tax credit cannot exceed $8 million. If you're a single organization applying and would like to apply across multiple industrial locations, we just ask that you reach out to us, as this is a little bit more of a complicated scenario, but we do encourage and have opportunity for project bundling to happen at multiple locations. Essentially, each location would have its own general application and a specific sub-application associated with that location. Generally, an organization can only apply once under Sitco per round, but If you are applying for multiple locations under one entity or one organization, we ask that you please reach out to us as this is allowable. We would just like to be made aware that this is the case for your organization. If you think your application is in a special scenario, please attend the office hours and or provide more information via the Google form, and or reach out to us via email. But again, all questions asked during the open application cycle will be made publicly available on the Google Drive. So what are the eligible project costs under Sitco? They fall into those two buckets, so industrial studies and then also greenhouse gas emission reduction projects. The eligible costs include any capital costs incurred, and we've segmented them into kind of three buckets. And they're all CapEx costs, so they all have to be either hard costs associated with the implementation of the project or the labor associated with the implementation of the project. For industrial studies, only labor is eligible under project costs for this program. For greenhouse gas emission reduction projects, the list is more expansive. The eligible project costs include capital costs associated with the purchase of the equipment, capital costs associated with the reduction equipment installation. So if wiring or concrete or conduit needs to be replaced or implemented to make the project come online, those would also be eligible. Installing or upgrading the utility service feed equipment owned by the applicant to directly support the implementation of the project. Shipping costs associated with the greenhouse gas emission reduction equipment. Labor associated with decommissioning and removal of the equipment to be replaced by the Sitco project. Labor associated with the installation of the proposed project. And then each specific sub-application, so each different project type has allowable or eligible costs associated with that specific technology. So please not only review the general standards and guidelines, but once you select the different sub-application that you would like to apply for, please review the eligible costs and disallowed costs underneath that specific sub-application. Again, you can find all of these links under that Google Drive folder that I shared at the beginning of the webinar. If you go into the standards and guidelines and application folder, you can find the different you can find the general application and general standards and guidelines, industrial studies, standards and guidelines and application, and then all of the different specific technology sub-applications. Again, it's important to note that the Sitco tax credit reservations can only be 30% of eligible costs and not exceeding the $8 million cap. If you have a total project cost estimate or project cost that exceeds or it would exceed $8 million, that means that your tax credit reservation would be less than 30%. The dictating criteria is that it cannot go over $8 million. If you would like to request more than 30% to be able to potentially meet that $8 million cap, we just ask that you fill out and within the project innovation section of the application, explaining why you believe that this project could be, that 50% cost coverage is eligible for this project. Again, it's a case-by-case basis. We ask for that explanation and that determination is made by the CEO. You can find the general standards and guidelines in the Google Drive folder. Like I said, each project-specific technology type has an associated standards and guidelines and application. Please review the general standards and guidelines and the project-specific standards and guidelines, as these documents are fairly comprehensive and are able to answer a lot of your questions. Additionally, within the Google Drive, under the supporting application documents, there is an application checklist. Each general application is required to submit a budget. There is a budget spreadsheet also under the supporting application folder on the Google Drive. Please fill out that budget spreadsheet and submit that with your application. And your organization's current W-9 results from the EnviroScreen tool. Instructions on how to do that is also in the Google Drive, a property owner consent form, and then the signed attestation with the standards and guidelines. Each sub-application has required attachments that are project specific, but each sub-application must include the following. So a project schedule, greenhouse gas emission avoidance or reduction estimates. There is also a spreadsheet for the reduction estimates found in the Google Drive folder as well. So please fill out that spreadsheet with your avoidance or reduction estimates and upload that with your application. Any other technical documentation, so some sub-applications require audits, some applications require studies, and then any other voluntary supporting documentation that you would like to supply with your application. You can find this checklist on the Google Drive. Our recommended approach for starting this application is to review the general standards and guidelines in the application folder. Then identify and review the project or study specific standards and guidelines, application, and corresponding requirements. Thirdly, begin gathering the necessary application documents and filling out those spreadsheets to be attached with your application. Again, project and study specific materials can be found in the corresponding standards and guidelines documents. We also recommend filling out a paper copy of the general application and supplementary sub-application documents. You can find the questions for the general application and then the sub-application in those corresponding folders. And then once you do all of those first 4 steps, uploading your answers and required documents to the Salesforce portal. Again, you can find these checklists and this recommended approach on the application checklist found on the Google Drive. How the application process actually is conducted is that you will apply on our Salesforce portal. You can find the link to the application portal thoroughly within all of the documents that are provided on the Google Drive and or on the website. It's important to know that caveat that I gave in under project bundling, that if you're bundling projects at one location, it all has to be implemented in the same tax year. So all projects have to come online in the same tax year. But essentially each applicant can only submit one general application and as many specific sub-applications as you'd like. Once you open the application portal, if you've done a recommended approach, you would be copying and pasting your answers into the general application. You would then select your project-specific sub-applications. Those would then become available to you once you submit the general application, and then you would be copying and pasting those answers from the physical document that you filled out into the Salesforce portal, and then you'd submit. So this is a little bit of a visual overview of how it goes. You'll gather all of that information for the general app and sub apps, and then you'll create a login for the portal. You will then submit out a general application. You will then select and fill out the different sub applications that you would like to apply for. And we would like to remind folks to please continuously save your progress. You'll be given save for later links and also be emailed links to your application portal. But make sure to save and track your progress. We've created a demonstration video on how to navigate the Salesforce portal. The link to this can either be found through this QR code or on the Citco website. Once you submit an application, you'll go through 3 stages of review: eligibility, technical, and evaluation criteria. We'll make sure that all the questions have been answered. required documents have been attached. You'll go through a technical feasibility review, and then your applications will be scored based on the criteria that I'll mention in the following slides. We'd like to highly encourage you to apply early. So if you can apply before December 31st, please do so. Determinations on our awards are made within 3 months of the application period closing. So if you apply earlier, that allows for the CEO to ask for clarification and provide feedback on your application, which in turn allows you to have more time to answer those questions and maintain eligibility. If you apply on December 31st, that limits that back and forth time between the CEO and your application, because we are required to make determinations on awards on March 31st of 2026. For industrial studies, you are scored on 5 criteria with a maximum of 55 points. This is during the evaluation committee portion of the application review. You are required to score an at least 60% to maintain eligibility and then be potentially awarded for an industrial study. Same criteria on how we address scoring greenhouse gas emission reduction projects applies. You are scored on 8 different criteria, a maximum of 115 points. Again, you must score a 60% to maintain eligibility. And then the evaluation committee will make a determination on your award after that. So if and when you are awarded a tax credit, then what happens? Essentially, awards will be announced on March 31st of next year, 2026. Once that happens, the CEO and the awardee will start developing a statement of work outlining the different reporting requirements and duties associated with your general application and your sub-applications. Then you will enter a tax credit agreement. We have sample language of what the tax credit agreement looks like within the Google Drive. If you're interested in what that contract language looks like, please refer to that document. You are able to submit with your application a redline version of this document for review of the CEO. This helps expedite kind of this process after you're awarded. All awardees are subject to biannual project development progress reports. Then those reports are required until the awardee completes the study or project. Then you will let the CEO know via a project notification of project completion. And then you will submit an audited, a certified public accountant audited CITCO cost certificate request. This is your signal to the CEO that the project has completed and you would like to claim the credit. The CEO will then issue the tax credit and notify the Department of Revenue. You will then claim the credit on your income tax return. And afterwards, the awardee will be subject to project reports for at least 4 years after receiving the tax credit. Please note that the reservation requests cannot exceed the awarded amount, so you cannot claim more on your tax credit or on your income tax return than you were awarded. Additionally, the awardee is strictly allowed to claim the credit once and after the project has been completed. So it is on condition of the project coming online. A few other things: tax credit must be claimed in the year in which the reservation has been approved, and the contents of the required notification of project completion and annual project reports are project specific. So please review those technology or project specific standards and guidelines. This is a general timeline of how this application cycle is going to go. The application cycle opened on October 1st. It will be closing on December 31st. Starting on October 21st, we will be hosting bi-weekly office hours. You can find the links to those signs up on the website or in the standards and guidelines. Application period closes on December 31st. Estimated notification of awards will be made on March 31st of 2026. The Salesforce application portal is opening on October 13th. So if you'd like to get started, please do the recommended approach that I mentioned earlier. All right. Last but certainly not least, um, some important notices. Please, if you can, submit your application early during the funding cycle. This not only benefits us as the CEO, but it also allows for you to do your due diligence and answer the questions that either the technical reviewer or the CEO has in terms of your application. Um, if you apply on December 31st, you will be only given 10 days to give answers to the questions that the CEO has to your application. If you apply earlier, that expands that 10 days. It's also important to note that an early application submission does not guarantee an early notification of award. We can guarantee that notifications of awards will come out at the end of March, but if you apply early, it doesn't mean that you will be awarded earlier. And again, if you are awarded, no tax credit related work or expenses can be carried out or incurred before the tax credit agreement and associated statement of work have been completed and signed by all parties. So we're calling that signature date. So when everyone signs that tax credit agreement, we're calling that the effective date. You can find the definition of that in the tax credit agreement. No expenses related to the tax credit can be incurred before the effective date. Once the effective date happens, then you can start accumulating your expenses. I know I've talked a lot. I'm going to have Anna Moon jump in from the Collective Clean Energy Fund to talk about her program and how it can help with financing for SICO programs. So Anna, I will allow you to share your screen now.
All right. Thank you, Lily, for that and for inviting me to be a part of this webinar. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Well, I'm excited to be here. And as Lily mentioned, I'm Anna, and I head up business development for the Collective Clean Energy Fund, formerly known as the Colorado Clean Energy Fund. We are a mission-driven nonprofit investment fund providing capital for energy-related projects. And in my role, I work with project owners to inform them about the financing solutions we offer, and I also engage with potential partners to pursue collaborative efforts. Today, I'll be providing an overview of CSUF and some of our products. At CSUF, our goal is to increase access to financing for clean energy projects and fill gaps in the market. And thus far, we have focused on projects that historically have had a harder time getting loans from banks. We have worked to reach communities and projects that have less access to the type of financing that they need. But with that being said, we work across all of Colorado to meet differing needs of businesses, both big and small, and that of homeowners. In addition, compared to a traditional bank, we can be more flexible with how we use our capital. And so this allows us to offer below market interest rates and longer term loans that enable clean energy projects to have better monthly cash flow. Our purpose and mission are centered around helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We have experts on staff who understand clean energy and can provide insights into cost benefits of various technologies and help determine the best structure for financing specific projects. We got our start back in 2021 with initial grant funding from the state of Colorado, and we've been continuing to expand our reach since then. As mentioned before, we have both a residential side and a commercial side to the organization. And on the commercial side of our organization, we give loans to businesses, nonprofits, and a variety of our other entities. We support a wide range of clean energy and energy efficiency measures, including building and process improvements, electrification, solar and storage, water conservation, just to name a few. So we've got a wide range. If you have a project and you have a question about whether or not it's a measure that's covered, feel free to reach out to me. I'll have my contact info at the end of the presentation. And in terms of loan products, given the evolving policies this year, CSUF is working to streamline our offerings and focus on addressing key needs in our state. And so to that end, we recently simplified our products to two types of loans, the energy improvement loan and the bridge to incentive loan. The energy improvement loan is a typical term loan that can go up to 1 million, and we do consider larger requests as well. So, looking at the Citco program, understanding that it can go up to 8 million, we're happy to consider larger requests if you're looking to take out a loan to help finance the project that has been granted the Citco tax credit. And we're also open to investing together with other lenders and to blend down their interest rate. So if they're offering a higher interest rate and they cover 50% of the loan and we cover the other 50, what you'll get is that averaged interest rate between ours and the other lenders, so you can have an overall lower interest rate. Our typical term is from 2 to 15 years. And again, in this as well, we are willing to go longer if you need a longer term loan. The way our loan is structured is that the borrower gets the cost of materials and equipment up to 50% of the loan amount at closing, and then the rest gets paid out at completion or substantial completion of the project. And so what we're looking to do is really help you with those upfront costs, given that the tax credit is happening after your project is completed. What we're trying to do is provide you access to capital from the start of your project when you're starting to put deposits down on equipment and things like that. I will note that the principal and interest payments for 100% of the loan amount start 30 days after closing. So that's something to keep in mind. Our second product, which is the bridge to incentive loan, and this would be applicable to you if you have other incentives that you've been approved for. So what we can do is do a combo loan where we've got the standard term loan that'll look at the project that you're doing with the Citco program. And then if you have other incentives that you've qualified for example, if you're doing industrial processes and you're upgrading your office buildings for your employees to heat pumps, and there are heat pump incentives that are applicable, then this bridge to incentive loan might be a good fit. So here what we do is we bridge the gap between the start of a project and the receipt of the reimbursable incentive funds. So the way this works is that once you have an incentive that's been awarded to you, we'll work with you to get that incentive reassigned to CSEF. And then that reassignment acts as the collateral for the loan. And so the loan will be for the exact amount of the incentive. We front that capital to you at the beginning of the project. And then when the project is completed, that incentive gets paid directly to CSEF and that pays off your loan. And in the meantime, you're only paying interest and the principal is deferred. So yeah, this can be a good mix with the term loan if depending on what measures you're covering in your project. In terms of process, if you have a project in mind and you want to start the conversation, the best thing to do is go to our website and submit our project intake form. So this intake form is not a loan application. It's a very simple, pretty straightforward form just for us to collect very basic information about your loan. That way, when we reach out to you, we can have an informed conversation to see if your project is a fit and we can be of assistance. If you do move to loan application, it's typically 30 days for us to do the underwriting evaluation and get to scheduling the closing. But that's assuming that you have all of the necessary documents ready to submit. So it's always better to start the conversation early. Feel free to reach out to me or fill out that intake form, and then someone from the team will reach out to you to get that intake meeting scheduled. And again, here is my contact info. Feel free to reach out if you want to chat, learn more, or have any questions. And that's it.
Thanks, Anna. Really appreciate it. Again, folks, if you are looking for financing options, in addition to the Citco program, we do encourage stacking of resources. So please reach out to Anna if you have any further questions about her programs. I'm gonna take over the screen share again. Now's the time for us to ask questions. So, just want to make sure. Awesome. We had a few questions happen in the chat and over the Q&A box. I'll just repeat them for everyone's sake. Raymond asked, I assume solar panel projects fit into one of these project areas when I was describing the greenhouse gas emission reduction projects. Unfortunately, solar projects of any kind are ineligible for Sitco. The primary point or goal of this program is to reduce Scope 1 emissions associated with industrial facility processes. When this program was crafted and written into legislation, we did have other solar incentives on the market. Unfortunately, due to the federal administration change, that has changed. If you are interested in potentially being a part of that conversation and to see if we can get some of those incentives back, please reach out to the appropriate representatives at the state level. Unfortunately, we cannot add solar into this program. Additionally, Cassie asked, can an entity apply for both the Clean Air Program grant and the Sitco program? The CAP program and Sitco program cannot be stacked within the same project. You can have CAP awarded and Sitco awarded projects at the same location. You just can't stack the incentives for the same project. And I will be, if you would like to ask a question live too, feel free to raise your hand and I can unmute you. Henry asked, grant eligible facilities are more than just GEM designated facilities. Correct. Yes, Henry, I want to make it clear that this is not a grant. This is a tax credit. It is a refundable tax credit. So if the credit wipes out the tax liability of your entity, you will be refunded the remaining amount, but it is not a grant. And yes, the facilities, if you go into the general standards and guidelines, you can see a complete list of the eligible applicant types. GEM facilities are just one of them. Other ones include NAICS codes 31 through 33. And then also we have a definition of an industrial facility based on our legislation. So if you have a NAICS code that is, let's say, 22, or something other than that, because I think 22 is landfills, and landfills are not eligible for this program. But fall into that industrial facility definition, then you can apply under that definition. Feel free to keep putting your questions in the chat or raise your hand and I can unmute you. We have a few more minutes left. Again, if you would like to ask a question in the future, please submit it to the Google form, which you can find on the Google Drive, which I posted a link to in the chat at the beginning of the webinar. Or you can send your questions to ceo_sitco@state.co.us. Or you can join the office hours, the bi-weekly office hours starting on October 21st, and ask your questions live then. And Raymond, I'd just like to note that Anna did reply to your comment as well. If you're looking for financing for a solar project, she is happy to chat with you, but unfortunately, solar is ineligible under Sitco. All right. With that, again, if you would like to receive updates to the program. Oh, did we get another question? Yes, you're welcome, Raymond. If you would like to receive updates on the program, which I'm sure that you all have signed up for our newsletter, if not, feel free to sign up for program updates here. And then a link to our SICO program feedback survey. You can also find this on our website. If you have feedback about anything in terms of the program, please fill out this form so we can track that and make sure that we're recording the feedback in a correct manner. And lastly, thank you all for joining. We really appreciate your participation, and we look forward to seeing eligible projects come and in the form of applications to this program. So thanks everyone, and we appreciate your time, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks everyone.